Mike Wall here from Process to Perform. The last couple of months we've been working with coaches through our brand new Perpetual Mastery Coaching Series. And I wanted to put together a quick video that will help you understand how to develop skill in the most efficient manner with your athletes. Now remember, skill is the result of a series of patterns that combine to create a technique. When we have that technique, we add decisions to create a skill. Now, if we want to be the best teachers of skill possible, we have to create the conditions for success by breaking down a skill into simple movements and patterns that your athletes can easily replicate and combine. So rule number one, get rid of big concepts and big ideas and make learning about digesting simple concepts and patterns. And let me add to this by saying that most confrontations in sports are determined before confrontation, meaning getting to where you want to be on the court or the field or in your relationship to your opponent. Getting to that position under control and in great body position is largely going to determine your success. So when you're breaking down a skill, don't make the mistake that even coaches at the professional levels are continuing to make every single year. Don't assume your athletes know how to get into the pre-confrontation positions that you want them to be in. That is a mistake because the majority of your athletes are not in that category. Rule number two, use a progression and don't move on to step two until step one becomes automatic. Great coaches understand that the basics will get you ahead of the game. So they will spend however much time is required to get your footwork down, to get your hand placement correct before moving forward, before going to number two. We use our progression stack system to teach skill because it can literally take us from non-decision-based movements to complex skills in one session. But you have to start with the basics and not accept anything below standard before moving on. And that leads us to rule number three. Rule number three is we want to put the athletes into the right body position so they can feel what success looks like and then teach them how to get there themselves. And this means early on, we have to use self-correcting exercises. Self-correcting exercises are those that will allow the athlete to determine whether or not they are performing the drill correctly without the presence of a coach. Now, with our football athletes, we try to use a lot of simple external cues to ensure that they understand how their bodies are supposed to be moving before we start introducing decision-making. So things like band resistance, external targeting, external landmarks. These are great tools to ensure that your athletes are getting into the right positions to find success. For example, if your athlete is a hip hinge explosive player, using a resistance band around the hips promotes proper body position and is a great external cue for the athlete to unlock their hips when making a sudden move. And the key is that the athlete understands what correct looks and feels like so they can work into the correct position themselves. Along with that, rule number four is that we should always train with the same equipment we have to play with. I want you to think about a jiu-jitsu match. Now, what would be the point of wearing a gi in training if you're not going to use the gi in your match? Or maybe conversely and better off, why would you not wear your gi in training when the match rules call for it? Because your techniques and your leverage points are going to be dramatically different if you're wearing the gi and if you're not. The same principle is true in so many confrontational sports, those that require padding or helmets, for example. You think about offensive and defensive linemen in football, linebackers and running backs. Anyone in football that has to learn about hand placement and punching to extend needs to have a partner who has shoulder pads on, or at least some sort of replacement suit that allows for proper hand placement. Because in this example, if we're just grabbing shirts, we will get better. We'll get better. But it is impossible to become as good as you would attacking shoulder pads, as precise as you could be without actually attacking the pads. If pads aren't allowed, there are ways around this. You could outfit them on a beam, or you could outfit them on a weighted mannequin. You could use your weight room staff. You could use your coaching interns. Solutions are there if you're willing to look for them. And the last rule, rule number 5, is speak in inches. Details are important. Be precise, speak in precise numbers, and communicate your intentions in execution with tangible standards. We don't ask our snipers to train by aiming at the side of a barn, and we shouldn't expect our athletes to become master technicians without having standards of execution. And this last one is something that many of you will need to sit down and write out to be specific with your ranges. You can use external cues to hammer home this process for your athletes, but with the majority of your athletes, communicating a standard that they can visualize and strive for will help them improve their technical abilities. Remember, the goal here is to create athletes that are read and react players. They bring in external information, they make decisions based on the external information and the experiences that they've had, and they create action. Now, we want all of their brain power directed towards that process, which means we do not have the time or the energy to process the internal how. How do I perform the next series of movements? Now, some people call this unconscious competence, and it is what we as skill development specialists are striving for. So there are your 5 rules of developing a skill. For more on this, go to www.process2perform.com or DM me, MikeWall68 on Twitter.